We're going to take a few minutes to talk about the teaching toolbox. Now, the teaching toolbox is a relatively simple concept. The idea is that over the course of time, you're going to see certain common errors from your students. It might be repeated writing errors, it might be repeated content errors, and you're going to find yourself repeating feedback on these errors. Now, eventually, you're going to realize that if you're typing the same feedback over and over, you could simply type it once, save it in some easily findable and searchable repository, and then use that with your students. And that's the teaching toolbox. It's a toolbox that will allow you to provide more feedback to your students in less time. Here's an example. This student has had a problem with APA formatting in the references. So the instructor has created a simple example of proper APA format. But below it, they've also added a link to a site that provides further information on APA citation format. This is a good idea. There are a variety of sites out there that provide a lot of good information. And as you encounter these, you should save those sites and then direct your students to them. Now, an important point. You don't want to simply highlight a passage and say you have a problem with APA and send them to a site. They need to know what the problem is, and more importantly, you should describe as much as possible what the issue is and even the solution. The link shouldn't be a substitute to providing good feedback. The link should enhance it. That is, the link should follow good feedback that tells the student what they did wrong and what they need to do better next time. And then the student can then pursue that link and get more information from that website. Now, there's a very important distinction, though, between providing common feedback and a teaching toolbox. Teaching toolbox will help faculty do a better job teaching, but common feedback is something to avoid. Common feedback is when you give the same feedback to numerous students. You have certain stock feedback in an assignment, and you simply cut and paste it as a substitute to providing detailed feedback. And this is something, of course, you should avoid. Students need personalized feedback on their problem. They're not going to improve it, they just get general feedback that can just as easily be provided by a computer. They need feedback specific to their particular needs. So it's important that the feedback be personalized, that you don't lose that personalization in using the teaching toolbox. So how do you provide personalization while at the same time saving your time with the teaching toolbox? One rule of thumb is to distinguish feedback from feed forward. Feedback is information on the student's performance, what they did well or poorly. Here we have an example where a student has a problem with the concept of random sampling and generalizability. The faculty member writes, "Here you were to explain the connection between random sampling and generalizability. The problem is that your explanation that random sampling, quote, ensures that all participants in a study have an equal chance of being selected, unquote, is a definition of randomness, not a justification for its use in research." The feed forward then follows. It would start with randomness is used in research because. Now that feed forward could be part of the teaching toolbox. You describe the connection between randomness and generalizability. Then you save that. And you might also include a link to a good resource that has a further discussion of it. That way the student can continue to explore this very important concept on their own. So it's important to always give personalized feedback on what the student has done well or poorly. But the feed forward could possibly be put in a teaching toolbox. And you'll notice that over time, this feed forward could be rather elaborate. You can write paragraphs on the connection between randomness and generalizability, and then maybe have one or two different links. The student can then take time to visit those different links. And since you're just copying and pasting that information from your teaching toolbox, it's not taking you a lot of time to provide it. If instead you're retyping it from scratch, you're probably going to take shortcuts, maybe just give a few sentences. But the teaching toolbox allows you to have a rather elaborate discussion of it ready at hand that you can provide your students. That's how you can both save time and provide better feedback than if you were simply rebuilding it on a case-by-case basis.